Hi, this is Jason Nickleby, Coordinator of Officials with the Minnesota State High School League, and this is basketball officiating training tape number 3. Going to take a look at 3 more plays this week: block charge, restricted area, mechanics, positioning, and coverage. And again, not picking on any one official or crew or team, just trying to learn from these plays and what we talk about prior to our games and how we communicate during the game so that we can get plays like these right and work through the other challenging plays that we have during the course of a typical basketball game. So thanks for your work again this year. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. And with that, let's take a look at some plays. On this play, I want to talk about our coverage and mechanics as it relates to a pass and crash, and then also secondary defender contact. So you see here we have a drive down the lane line nearest the team bench, and we have a run over right at the block, and she dishes out to the shooter on the wing. And we have a double whistle on this play. We have a whistle from lead, and then we also have a whistle from center. Now, I like the fact that we don't have preliminary signals, block or charge from either one of these officials. We just have a fist in the air, which if we're going to have double whistles, which we want to limit, we have a way of getting out of it if we just put a fist in the air. That way we haven't committed to anything, and then we can either get together and have a conversation, or we can have the primary official take the call, report to the table, and move forward. So I did like that part of it, that we just have a fist in the air from both officials and we don't commit with a preliminary signal, because that's when we have blarges, and nothing we can do to get out of that if we have a blarge. So the way to avoid that is to do what we do here, just put a fist in the air, and even better yet, just know where our primary coverages begin and end. That way we have one whistle on most plays. Now, on this particular play, we have a secondary defender that is outside of the restricted area, sets up to take a charge, and then gets run over by the ball handler, who dishes the ball to the wing. Now, remember, if we have a block charge situation that involves a secondary defender in the paint, that's going to be the lead's primary area, because they know how that secondary defender got there, if they got there in time, were they outside the restricted area. And because this defender is outside of the restricted area, we are going to officiate this play just like we would a block charge anywhere on the playing court. And do we establish legal guarding position prior to the contact? Do we maintain that legal guarding position legally? And then is the contact initiated by the offensive player in this particular case, which it is. So an offensive foul, team control foul is the proper ruling on this play, and we do that. But remember, this is the lead's primary because it involves a secondary defender who is setting up to take a charge in the paint. And especially when we have a pass and crash like this and we dish it out to the non-primary official's side, the center in this case needs to go with the shooter and not with the contact in the paint. They should divert their attention to the shooter on the wing, and the lead would take that contact in the paint. So something to pregame, talk about primary coverages, who has what as it relates to drives, pass and crash, block charge, secondary defender, and so forth. Because remember, if we do not have a secondary defender involved in this play and we have contact in the paint, we're going to draw a line right down the middle of the paint, and the center is going to take the contact to their side, and the lead would take the contact to their side. But in this particular case, we have a block charge involving a secondary defender. The restricted arc is potentially involved. In that case, we are going to have the primary official be the lead, and the center would take the passing portion of this play. So proper call, offensive foul, team control foul. We do the fist and instead of the hand behind the head, so that's proper. We haven't changed that signal in Minnesota this year, so the proper way to handle this play is with an offensive team control foul, and we would prefer that the lead have primary on this contact. Okay, similar situation on this particular play where we have contact almost in the same exact area of the paint. But in this case, we have a no call. So let's talk about our coverages. So we're in good initial position. Center's working low. Lead maybe could close down a step towards the laid line, but overall in good position to officiate this play. And we all close down at trail and center, so that's good. But you notice the contact involves a secondary defender right at the restricted arc. So if you remember our coverages and our primary coverage areas, which we discussed in the last play, because this is a secondary defender involved block charge type play in the paint, the lead is going to have primary coverage responsibility for this play because they're going to know, or we want them to know, if this defender gets there on time, gets outside the arc, establishes legal guarding position, etc. And if you notice where this contact occurs in relation to the other players that are in the paint, another reason that it would be good leads if we could close down a step towards the lane line, we would have a better line of sight to see this action. I think where we're at now, we are looking through a couple players, which does make this play difficult to officiate. So that's a coverage and positioning piece. We want to close down a step towards the lane line, and we'll have a better line of vision to see this contact and make a ruling. Now, let's take a look at the contact itself and the provisions of the restricted arc rule and so forth. Now, this secondary defender does get outside the restricted area. Remember, if we're on or over the restricted area, so if we go up on our tippy toes and our heels are over the restricted area, we're still in it for the purpose of a restricted area blocking foul. In this case, it appears that she does get outside of the restricted area. However, at the time of contact, it appears that she is still moving forward into the shooter. So the proper call on this play would be a blocking foul, and it would be a two-shot blocking foul. This is not a restricted area blocking foul, and that's an important distinction because if we call this a restricted area blocking foul, so we signal a fist, signal a block, and then point at the restricted area, that's telling everyone in the arena the only reason that's a block is because the secondary defender was in the restricted area, which means the center or trail is going to come with information, share that she was outside the restricted area, and then we would have to change it to a charge, which would not be the proper ruling on this play. So it's important to only rule restricted area blocking fouls when they are actually in the restricted area and they have established legal guarding position in the restricted area. If they have not established legal guarding position, whether it's in the arc or outside, like on this play, it's just a regular blocking foul. So we don't want to end up changing a legitimate blocking foul like we have here to a charge by indicating this is a restricted area blocking foul. This is just a typical blocking foul. She's moving forward into the shooter, doesn't have legal guarding position established and legal at the time of contact. And remember that the primary coverage for this play is with the lead because we have a block charge involving a secondary defender in the paint area. On this last play, take a look at our positioning. As center, we're a little high, but then we work down low. We get to a spot where we can see space, so that's good. And then we ultimately end up in a good spot for all of our officials. Our lead is one step off the lane line, center, free throw line extended, and all that. On this particular play, we have two possible traveling violations. And just a reminder, just because something looks ugly or off doesn't necessarily mean it's illegal. Take a look at this first example. Catches the ball in the air, so we can put her off the ground and then make the pivot foot her left foot. Remember, as you might recall from the online meetings, we said that if they are out in space, making a move to the basket, spin move, those kinds of things, we're going to put them off the ground almost all the time, which allows them more options with the pivot foot. We're going to allow them to do that. And in this particular case, catches the ball in the air and then ultimately left foot, pivot foot, and then right foot step forward with a dribble. So a good no call in my estimation on this particular example. And then the second example occurred later in the play, and as this dribbler is dribbling at the top of the key, picks up the dribble with the feet off the ground, right foot becomes the pivot foot, and then the left foot just steps and stops. And this looks very ugly, looks illegal in real time, but it's properly no called. And remember, pick up the pivot foot, know what they can do, what they can't do, and so forth. And this is a really good example of just because something looks bad doesn't necessarily mean we should put air in the whistle, and we don't here. So well done by the crew, in particular the trail, who was the center, no calling both of these examples. And we just want to be able to explain why it is or is not a violation. In this case, doesn't establish the pivot foot until she controls the ball, and at that point the right foot is the pivot foot, takes one big long step with the left and passes. So this is two legal plays, not traveling violations. Well done by the crew. Okay, that's it for training tape 3, taking a look at block charge, positioning, primary coverages, especially in the paint, and then traveling violations. So just a couple things to go through with our crews during our pre-games, and as well during the game. Have some communication, some conversations with your crew during the game to make sure we're still on the same page as we go. We're doing a nice job. Keep it up, stay healthy and stay safe, and we'll talk to you next week.